Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. This week, we are talking about a movie that Kyle had mentioned he was going to pick, and then we just figured, why the fuck not? Let's just jump into it. So let's hop into the car, because we're talking about Christine.
Yes, we are.
Yes. It's a movie about a killer car, for those of you who don't know. That's why I made that hop in the car.
Scott, this was you?
Yeah. This was a last-minute change, and there may be another last-minute change by the end of the summer. I went with this because I believe that we were talking about Christine when we were talking about my other John Carpenter pick, The Fog, yes. And I think that Carly said this is her favorite John Carpenter, right?
She did. She had mentioned that it was her favorite John Carpenter, though she also mentioned In the Mouth of Madness, which is also a great episode that you guys had. She really likes Christine, and I think that, that's very telling, and that's not to speak necessarily to Carly, but I think that that's, very telling of the type of movie that Christine is. It's just such a good, it's just, and it's obviously it's King and Carpenter, and the perfect match in my mind that those two could have hooked up on.
Yeah, well, and I said this on the Fog episode, and I said it kind of tongue in cheek, but there is an element of truth to it, which is what I said. My favorite Carpenter movie is whatever one I'm watching at that time. And what I actually mean by that is that I do think that his output is so consistently good that I'm having such a good time watching any one of his movies at any given moment that I'm always like, why don't I watch this one as much as I watch blank, blank, and blank? Obviously, Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, those are my favorite Carpenter movies. Yeah. Those are the ones that I love. But when I'm watching The Fog, I'm always like, why don't I watch this regularly? Yeah. And I felt the same way walking away from Christine. I was like, why haven't I not watched this movie since I was 19 years old?
Yeah, this is my second watch ever.
Same. I finished reading the book and then I watched it for the first time the same week. And I think my takeaway was they cut a lot out from the book. And now that I don't remember anything about the book, I'm like, man, that's a really well-paced movie.
I think it works a lot better as a John Carpenter film than a Stephen King adaptation. And I gotta say that I'm with you guys that this feels very Stephen King. It really, I don't know, and I would have never have clocked John Carpenter as being able to hit the vibe of Christine, specifically because I feel like Christine is a great distillation of Stephen King's favorite tropes, which is kind of like a killer inanimate object and 50s rock and roll, greasers, a lot of that stuff that kind of is secondary to so much of his material that is really front and center in Christine, the book and the movie. And I haven't read Christine in 25 years easily. I might have been 13 when I read it even. It's been a long ass time. I had to reacquaint myself with the source material after watching the film so that I could kind of do an A-B comparison. You don't have to make a comparison because I think that this movie really sits in its own power as a great film and a great story.
It makes good cuts.
Yeah, because to keep it at an hour
cuts.
Was an hour and 40 minutes. It's not long.
Something like that. Yeah, no, it's smooth. I think the other thing that's worth bringing up with this particular movie is one of the other things that reignited my desire to want to rewatch it is a podcast that I referred to in the past, the High School Slumber Party podcast, covered this. And what they said, and I watched it with this lens, and they're absolutely right, is that they were like, this movie really is just as much a teen high school movie as it is a horror movie. Like it really spends time in that high school. It lingers in that high school. It hits kind of the tropes of a high school movie. And then it gets horror. And that's kind of where the horror actually works, because it makes you understand these characters.
Yeah.
And like the whole movie, you want Arnie to not continue down the path that he's going.
Yeah.
Like they make him likable enough out the gate that it is really a tragic, like it is a tragedy at the end of this movie that Arnie succumbs to the car.
That's the best thing about this movie, is that from what I remember from the book, is Arnie feels a lot less likable.
Yes.
And that's also a very Stephen King thing to do, is like, because just as in the movie, in the book, Arnie kind of shifts from being the main character very early on to being through the lens of his best friend. So, you know, like
witnessing it happen.
Yeah, and I think that also is kind of a very King trope to follow through with, which is like that sadness, that deep despair of watching human horror unfold before you and not being able to do anything about it. Like that hopelessness, I think, is so King, at least in his earlier stuff. And I think that he really pushed towards that when he went away from horror more to fantasy and drama, when he did Under the Dome, basically. You know, like I think of that and Hearts at Atlantis, when he really kind of embraced that part of his writing style. And super coincidentally, it has nothing to do really with it. It has to do with my age at the same time, but I got away from reading his material almost identical to the time when he moved into the drama and fantastical stuff. It has nothing
it's
to do
also,
with him.
it's interesting that you bring up like that they don't shift the narrative in this adaptation, because it's kind of similar. Like, let's go to the very beginning, the first Stephen King book and the first Stephen King adaptation. Like, Carrie is essentially written through a series of like interviews in the book.
Right.
So like they had when De Palma made that movie, he had to come up with a narrator. He had to like
And
he
I
had
think
to
it
make
works.
it focus.
I really
it was.
do think it
I think
works.
that in the hands, Stephen King, here we go with Matt Kelly's weird comparisons. Stephen King's material is very similar to Nick Cage as an actor. You need the right director who knows how to rein it in and utilize it. Put in the wrong hands, you just have a mess like Lawnmower Man. Like you just have like a thing that's just like, this is all over the place.
Or
None
Vampire's
of this
Kiss.
connects to like Vampire's Kiss. Exactly.
And you want to know the really fucking crazy thing about you mentioning Nick Cage is that he auditioned for the Buddy character in this. Can you imagine Buddy, the guy with the big sideburns, who is like the ringleader of the
Holy
bad guys?
fuck. Somebody needs to just like
imagine
face app and put young Nick Cage on him in all those scenes, just so we could live that. That'd be fucking incredible.
I think the biggest casting one where I was like, yeah, this movie wouldn't have worked with this person, even though I love this person, was that John Cusack was in the running to play Arnie. And
Really?
I just don't think that would have worked for me.
No.
I know that they were thinking about Scott Baio, and they were like, oh, we want to go with unknowns.
Which paid off. And I mean, it's ironic that like Keith Gordon, who plays Arnie, you know, he had like a couple decent film roles in the 80s. He was Rodney Dangerfield's son in Back to School. But if you go on his IMDb, he's directed more than he's acted at this point. So he's listed as a director above actor, and has done, you know, like nothing. He hasn't had like this giant banger of movies per se, but he's directed some like big shows. He did The Killing, he did Dexter, he did a couple episodes of Nurse Jackie. Like he's an active TV director still, like producing stuff that just came out in 2020. So like,
and I think that that's important. I really do think that it's important to be a worker, like to work, instead of having this ideal of like, I need this movie to be like my one shining example of my skill. You know, I don't know. That's just me being super Midwestern about Hollywood, I guess.
Well, that's like I think that Hollywood, and we've talked about this in and out, but Hollywood gives you this mindset that it's not a body of work, it's the work that you're doing like right now. And like as East Coast, Midwest, maybe anybody who doesn't live on the fucking West Coast, we view it totally differently. And like the world is just proving us right time and time again that it cannot be one single thing. It has to be a body.
well, and that's the thing though, that because that having that big success can be just as much of a curse as it is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I would say more so.
More so. I listened to an interview with Adam West recently on a walk today, and he was talking about Batman.
Adam West?
This was an old interview. So he was saying in the interview that he was like, when I saw the script for 60s Batman and I got what it was and that it was this campy joke and I knew exactly how I wanted to play it, he's like, all of the critics somehow took away, the takeaway was that this is a comedy, but Adam West isn't in on the joke. And for 20 years, it was very difficult for him to get work. He's like, I literally got fired out of a cannon in a Batman suit at one point just so I could make enough money to cover a year's worth of mortgage. And it wasn't until he leaned into the joke and said, sure, I'm Adam West who's not in on the joke, that he started getting cast in all types of movies and shows just playing Adam West. And it was but it's that's what it took. No one, this is a dude who's a classically trained actor who's very intelligent.
I think that we would I'm just thinking about how if Keith Gordon was that guy, who we were he was in Christine and then that was it.
You basically just find him at an airport hotel signing autographs every couple weeks.
I would be oh God, I actually might taint my view of the movie, which would be terrible. but Carpenter's never really had.
Hard worker.
Carpenter's never really. It doesn't feel like he's ever really worked with anybody like that, except the one guy who still goes to conventions, Charles Moran, as first Michael Myers.
Yep.
Yes, that guy.
Maybe that's the one guy. Is it Charles Moran?
But
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But I also think that John Carpenter is an interesting character in the sense that time and time again, you look at his career trajectory, he loves taking a risk on the unknown actors.
Big time.
Because he does not give a fuck.
Because he's got a Lakers game to watch.
Yeah, it's untested actors, a lot of it. Even something as simple as all right, I'm going to put Rodney Piper as the lead in my movie. It's that's kind of a ballsy move to have the budget to make a movie. And you're all right, I'm going to take a risk that this wrestler is going to be able to carry this entire movie on his shoulders.
Yeah, but I think that's also just such a testament to John Carpenter as a fucking director. He's I know exactly what I want from you, and I'm going to get it, and we're all going to go home and make some money, and it'll be fine.
But, and I've said this 1,000 times, but John Carpenter also is the king of just making the movie that John Carpenter wants to watch.
Yep. Amen to that.
I think that man... Him and Tobe Hooper are the two men that I think just straight up refused to hear anything that a studio had to suggest about their movies.
I think we're going to return to Tobe Hooper later on this year, if I remember correctly.
I know what you're picking, buddy. Yeah. And I'm for it.
Because I'm thirsty, I just want to drop this real quick. One from Fat Orange Cat called "She Drives a Second-Generation 4-Door Plymouth Satellite." It wasn't a Belvedere, but it was so close.
Wait. I thought that wasn't this a Fury?
So it might have been. I thought it was a Belvedere, but
I don't know shit about cars. From what I read, I believe that the Fury was the Belvedere with different it was the Belvedere frame with a different skin basically on top of it, which is ironic because Christine can reinflate her shit when she gets hit up.
Yeah, why can't Christine just become a new car?
Why can't she just become a girlfriend and make these fucking incels happy instead of making them murder people?
Can we talk about how good that reinflation still looks in this movie?
Did you read up on how they did it?
It was all hydraulics, was it?
It was plastic with hydraulics behind it, where they would actually... the plastic was with the hydraulics inflated, and then they would remove the air so it would crumple, and then they would reverse it. Blew my fucking
ingenious.
mind.
It's ingenious.
So good.
And the thing about that is that I know that people are going to be like, oh, it's practical effects. You shouldn't be shocked by it. It's 1983. But when I go back and look at how good that shit looks, I think that any good practical effect should be sleight of hand. It should be magic. It should be stage magic, where you're like, how did they do that? And even when it's still enchanting. I love that shit.
Well, that's what made me like something like Penn and Teller, where they go up there and they're literally showing you how they do the trick, and somehow the trick is more impressive.
Yeah.
Because it's it is. It's that's why we read Fango the way that we did. That's why we like cared about that stuff.
And
like,
Carpenter fucking knows how to like direct and shoot that shit, or like where it's gonna like, because all I think of is The Thing too, you know. It's like,
Oh my God,
every
yeah.
fucking effect in The Thing, and obviously, I mean, this is to the special effects people. I don't want to say, you know, it's not
yeah.
just Carpenter, but it's like the knowledge and the understanding of where those things are going to land in your piece. It's like, and what they're going to do to an audience.
knowing the placement of shots. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like
Those
I think
headlights
that as
turning
much-
on before it happens.
That's
just like,
that's what I was gonna say. That shot of his silhouette as the headlights kick on before anything happens is just as impressive and like chilling as watching the car like come to life again. Like,
yeah. Because on paper, I don't want to watch Christine. On paper, I don't want to
That's
fucking
the
watch
reason
this
why
movie.
this is only the second time I've ever watched
Yes.
it.
Right.
It was literally us spending almost a year talking it up that I was like, maybe we should talk about Christine.
Yeah, and that
You
could have
know?
easally backfired. That could, like, you know
Oh,
what I
I
mean?
thought that it
Like,
was going to, because the first song that you hear is Bad to the Bone, which is my least favorite fucking song in the world.
well, do you know the full? Did you read the full story on that?
Yes. That
That
George
George
Thorogood was
Thorogood
supposed to
got
be in the
cut from the
final
movie.
scene because he can't act. So George Thorogood can't act, can't sing, can't write a fucking song. Why is he famous? Fuck you,
I don't
George
know. I
Thorogood.
don't mind one bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
It
what,
says the
all
fucking straight edge
22
guy.
minutes of it?
Oh. You know what I want is I want this movie re-fucking cast, and I want the fucking Steve Miller Band to be as the song, and then we get Steve Miller, who may or may not still be alive. I don't know.
I think he still is because he was my first concert. Was Steve Miller and George Thorogood.
Oh,
Not
my
a joke.
God.
Oh, you're a
I
George
thought that was a
Thorogood
bit.
apologist, you fuck.
No, dead serious. That was the first concert I ever
insane.
went to. Followed immediately by the Ska Mania '98 tour, where I saw the Insiders, Five Iron, and Supertones.
Okay, well that makes
This
up
explains
for
a
seeing George
lot.
Thorogood live. Yeah,
This explains a lot
the
to me,
damage
dude.
that was
I
done.
loved Steve Miller Band as a kid, and I still don't hate Steve Miller Band.
I never
as an
liked
adult.
Steve Miller Band until I had to sit through them play for 50 minutes before seeing Journey, and I was
man.
like, this is the worst night of my life. And then Journey came
didn't
on with Only
realize
the
it-
Young, and they opened up with Be Good to Yourself, and I was like, much better now.
Redemption.
You know, I was so much happier. So
You probably knew this. Cassettes, our friends in Cassettes, very briefly had a Journey cover band. Can't Stop, Won't Stop Believing.
no, I did not know that. Was Sean
I
doing
saw
that
them
shit?
live a couple times.
Sean was in it.
Sean was the drummer, Joe was the bassist, and then Goldie played guitar, and then it was a girl that he worked with at the gym singing vocals and her girlfriend playing keyboards. And they
That
did,
makes me laugh
like-
so hard that they had to find a woman to play Steve Perry's parts.
So I have to tell you this story about Separate Ways. My next door neighbor when I was growing up had this impressively powerful stereo system. And man, did that dude love two songs by Journey. And man, did he play those two songs back to back to back. And one of them was Separate Ways, and the other one was Wheel in the Sky.
Oh,
and we would
that's
be
a bad
we would
choice.
be in the pool, and it would just be like, Wheel in the sky keeps on turning. Then immediately followed by like, someday love will find you. And then that song ends and right back into Wheel in the sky. Keeps like, it was just a loop of those two songs for hours on end. Side note, this is the same strange neighbor that in the summer it was too hot to cut the grass. So he would cut the grass at night with his wife following him in the front of the lawnmower with a flashlight so he could see where the lines were.
So he's the lawnmower man.
That's the fucking funniest shit I've ever heard.
Just got too hot here in Pennsylvania.
Apparently. So are we talking about Christine?
Honey, it's 10 o'clock. We got to go mow the lawn.
I don't want to upset anybody in the morning.
Yeah.
Let's do it at
10
night.
o'clock's 10 o'clock's the perfect time.
But yeah, so Christine, I mean,
Hey, I got to tell you
This guy-
guys a couple things.
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about the violence in this movie.
No.
and why there's
We got to
very
talk
little
about the
of
music and then the violence.
it. Okay.
So, okay, also the violence in this movie, there's none. It was going to get a PG rating, and they had to add fuck more so that they could get an R because this came out in 83, and there was no PG-13 rating at the time. We'll come back to that. So the first song is Bad to the Bone. and I'm like, I'm like biting my fingers, nervous about it, and then it immediately goes into "Not Fade Away" by Buddy Holly. I'm like, whew, just like patting my forehead, and then the rest of the movie is all just bangers from the late 50s
until those credits hit, and then
Bad
shuts
as the
it off
Bone
as
comes
quickly
out
as
again.
possible.
Fucking hell, I love.
I just knew the music was gonna be your shit too. I was just like, as soon as the cover of "Not Fade Away," like the different version
and I
of "Not
liked
Fade Away"
that.
switched.
I've never heard that cover, but
I never heard
liked
that
it a lot.
cover, or I hadn't heard that cover obviously since we watched the movie.
I didn't notice it when I was in high school listening to this, watching this.
But I was like, Scott's gonna love this, and then he's gonna do his own version, and it's just gonna be great.
Well, I mean, Carpenter has to have at least a couple things from this, and I can bring it. I can bring in some of that 50s rock when I do the Christine theme. The best thing about this though is that when I do Carpenter, and Kyle, I know Matt saw, but did you see that I'm going to do it's going to be a split EP with D'Argento? So it's going to be Argento songs.
So
it's so
excited.
So stupid.
Just so you know, the "Not Fade Away" cover is performed by Tanya Tucker, who sings Delta Dawn, which is such a great song.
That's Hunter's like bedtime song. That was like what I sang to him to get him to sleep. Like one of like the 4 or 5 songs in my set list when I used to rock him to sleep. It was Delta Dawn. Oh my god!
A song that I learned because of Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, and then learned to love the original.
I did not know that was her. That's amazing. I had the soundtrack at one point, and it literally went right to Horror Finds and got sold very quickly.
It didn't make it onto the soundtrack. That's how I found out. I just checked.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they didn't need 2 copies of it.
Yeah, there was 5 songs that never made it onto the soundtrack. ABBA's "The Name of the Game," Bonnie Raitt's "Runaway," Richie Valens' "Come On Let's Go," Tanya Tucker's cover of "Not Fade Away," and Rolling Stone's "Beast of Burden."
Well, I'm really happy about that because fuck the Stones. They have no place being in this movie. They don't fit at all.
No, they're still on the classic rock station of
Blumhouse is working on a remake of this. And Brian Fuller's writing it.
Are you... Dude, my soul left my body just then.
I love that.
Wow.
I love the sound of that.
Okay with that, and they're looking at the director of Cube to direct it.
That's huge.
Good for
too.
him.
Honestly,
Good for him.
It's going to be Jason Blum with the directors of Cube and the guy who directed the Ginger Snaps trilogy.
Wow.
Like all collaborating on this Brian Fuller penned remake. That has every...
Quick, guys, let's get into a doorway and stack on top of each other.
Yeah, but literally, that's like one of those things.
Bricked right now.
Yeah, that's like literally one of those situations where it's like, it's y'all to fuck this up. Like, if this is awful, it's your fault. It's your fault. Yeah. You did it. Everybody was fine, and whoever has the money fucked it up.
Yeah. So also, I gotta say that when I do Carpenter and my Christine song, there are 2 great lines. It's the really horny best friend of Dennis. When he sees Lee for the first time, he goes, "She smiled at me. I want to have deep, meaningful sex with her."
Yes. I want to say that is, so I'm pretty sure that's Richie.
Yeah. He's got like 3 lines, and they're all great.
Mm-hmm. And if he looks vaguely familiar, he's the guy that Peter Venkman keeps electrocuting in the beginning of Ghost. Okay,
that's
not that guy.
Buddy's best friend. He's the guy who gets the shock treatment scene at the beginning of Ghostbusters and spits out his gum. I have that as a note too. I wasn't even going to hit that, but you got to it. No, it's Dennis's best friend, other best friend. He's giving Arnie shit because Arnie can't open his locker, but he's like he's such a horn dog, and he pushes Dennis to go talk to Lee for the first time. Also, this is a weird fucking high school because Kelly Preston is apparently not hotter than the woman who played Lee.
No kidding.
Yeah. And that's crazy to me because she looks like Marty McFly's mom. Okay?
Yeah.
Which is the bar.
Yeah, the bar.
The bar is
this
up
movie
here.
Also, gotta give credit. Beyond the fact that obviously we're 27 minutes into recording this. If the listeners haven't figured it out, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say all 3 of us like this movie. But I laughed more than I thought I was going to laugh while watching this movie.
Like way lighter.
The lines are really fun,
and it was going to be funnier. They cut some of that shit. There were 20 deleted scenes, and a lot of them were jokes, I believe.
Spoiler alert: Christine's great, guys.
It's only 38 years old.
Yeah, Deep Cut. I know it's one of our more obscure films we've talked about on this show. It's no Mosquito, but or Loch Ness Horror.
Right.
But if you've heard of this Deep Cut,
Yeah,
Christine's
yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, you know where to find us. I just feel like in the same way that we're like, we can always be like, I don't know what our favorite Carpenter is. A lot of times, it's like, I mean, I think we can always pick our least favorite Carpenter, but it's like, it's that rotating. But of the Carpenters that we're like, oh, those are great. It's this rotating list where like something always falls to the bottom. You know,
Yes.
and it's like right now, it's like if my favorite is the most recent one, truly my least favorite right now has to be the one I haven't watched in a long time. Is it fucking Halloween? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
It's Halloween.
It's Halloween. Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things where you also have to just focus on, and I think I did this on The Fog too, but I just want to remind everybody the incredible run of movies in a row that he did
Do it again.
before
List
he
them.
started to dip. Because you go from, I mean, we'll even start all the way in the beginning, right? Like he did Dark Star, he did Assault on Precinct 13, but then it's Halloween, Someone's Watching Me, The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, Starman, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, They Live, Memoirs of an Invisible Man, and In the Mouth of Madness. Then you really start to hit the rough patch that is like The Village of the Damned remake, Escape from LA, Vampires, Ghosts of Mars, and The Ward.
And you start to wonder if it's really his fault or if he's just understanding the system and he's just like, whatever. Like, you know, it's like
He's gonna make his money no matter what. He's got a name by 2000. What was Ghost of Mars? 2001, 2002. I just feel like he is so good that even like, okay, Escape from LA. That was the second one, right?
Yep.
Yes.
It's stupid as fuck, right? But it's fun. And
fun.
Ghosts of Mars,
It's fun.
they are pushing Ghosts of Mars real hard and Vampires real hard on Netflix at me right now. I got on a Netflix last night to watch something and fall asleep, and it's like, watch John Carpenter's Vampires, and it's like right after it's like Escape from LA. And I'm like, I don't really wanna, but I also am probably gonna eventually get to it, you know?
Yeah.
Like a bad John Carpenter is still a lot better than most Netflix.
Hey, do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, WeKnowPodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
All right, Scott, what's a double feature you got for this bad boy?
Rubber.
Perfect. All right.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Enough to say.
You suck. You jerk.
Dude, if you're not paying to watch those videos, you should probably bump up your Patreon donation just to watch Kyle choke on a beer. I remember my first beer. It didn't happen yet.
It hasn't happened yet.
I honestly, I really just, I want to watch more Carpenter, but I want to watch something that's like not tame at all. And we had mentioned it earlier, but I want to watch Ghosts of Mars after this.
It's out
think
there,
that,
all right?
I just think that like Christine is such a perfectly tight, like pure Carpenter, pure Stephen King. Like it just hit. It's just so clean.
Would you call
Ghosts
it
of Mars?
a grounded film?
I would. I would.
You son
It's
of a bitch.
very grounded, very grounded. It's got all wheels on the ground, and Ghost of Mars is just up in the sky. It's just fucking.
It's the wheel
out
in
of
the
this world.
sky.
It's a wheel in the
Keeps on
sky. And it
turning.
just keeps on turning, and I don't know what I'll pick for a double feature next week.
All right. I wasn't really sure what I was going to go with for a double feature, but we were recording this back to back with last week's episode, Sorority Babes, at the Slime Ball Bolorama, and Kyle had mentioned Night Shift movie that he watched, and what it triggered in my brain was a movie that I saw at the last Fantastic Fest I went to in person that would actually be perfect with Christine, which is Vast of Night, which is
yeah.
a incredible science fiction horror film that takes place in the 50s. So you've got that whole like greaser aesthetic going throughout the film. Really, I just need an excuse to rewatch that
I've
movie.
not
'cause
heard
it's
of
been
this.
forever.
Vast
Oh,
of
the
Night?
Vast of Night is great, and it's
The Vast
on,
of Night. It's
on-
on Prime.
Yeah.
The way that the director explained it at Fantastic Fest was he was trying to make a Twilight Zone episode,
God,
like a feature-length Twilight Zone episode. So it's
Okay.
literally the day of the big basketball game. The two teenagers who work at the local radio station pick up alien signals and are trying to warn the rest of the town, but they have no means of getting to where everybody is at the basketball game.
I added it to my list. All you had to say was 50 sci-fi in the past 5 years, and I'm there.
It's and some amazing drone work in that. Scott, speaking of movies that Kyle's about to watch, what have you watched recently that you think people should check out?
Can I do a self-promotion instead?
Absolutely.
So, thank you. I would have probably done
not
it even.
No, go for it, buddy.
Man, you got me so good. I was hoping that you'd say yes because I don't have anything interesting to talk about otherwise. For listeners that don't know me, I had a 50s rock and roll band called Survivor Girl for a couple years, and all the songs were trying to be authentic 50s rock and roll. And every song was from the point of view of a different killer in a horror movie or a monster. That band has gone into hiatus, stasis, whatever, but I still love 50s rock. And I have for the last couple years at this point, I've been ramping it up this year in particular, but for the last little bit, I have been doing 50s rock covers of pop punk songs from the late 90s, early 2000s. I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm going to do the inverse where so I'm calling this Punk Goes 50s. I'm going to also do 50s Goes Punk later on, where I do the more traditional pop punk interpretations of very obscure songs from the 50s, probably a lot of girl groups from the early 60s as well, because that stuff is super fun. But yeah, if you like that, please look up the Misfits Saturday Night 1950s cover on YouTube. You'll find it. I am on YouTube as, I believe, just Scott Roger. So Scott Roger Music. So if you want to look me up, I'm just putting music out all the time. And it's just for fun. It's just for me. I can't monetize it because they're covers. So it's unlikely that you will ever see it on Spotify or anything on that matter, but you can always find it on YouTube, and I might wrap it up. I might take everything that I've done, like the raw files, master it, remix everything, master it, and do like a free album when I get to like 15 songs or something like that, and do the best of everything. So yeah, but that's what I wanted to pimp out a little bit. Since it's Christine, 1950s, it makes sense.
It makes sense, and it's so fucking fun. They're such fun covers. I'm so happy that you put them out. I have so much fun
making them, and the best part is when I get to do like the falsetto background vocals, because I wait until Megan's gone, and then I make the most absurd sounds you can imagine.
I imagine you still go in the shower just to like really make it like authentic.
It's actually right in this room. I practice in the shower.
Okay.
There are two things I do in the shower.
There's a practice space and there's a recording studio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I practice. All right. Anyway.
You say you think about us?
I think about you guys, and I practice for my 50s rock and roll.
Stop it.
So Kyle, what do you want to talk about, buddy?
So I'm done with my Chattanooga Film Festival recap, and I have moved back to my normal stomping grounds, which is Vinegar Syndrome releases, and they recently put out a movie called Red Surf, which stars George Clooney as the lead and Gene Simmons as a one-off boss character, very similar to his role in Never Too Young to Die, which I hope that the patrons will eventually pick as a movie to watch. But it's a movie about, it doesn't, I'm not going to tell you what it's about. It doesn't fucking matter. What matters is that George Clooney is a fucking actor. Like, he brings, and like he plays his particular character very similar to a George Clooney, but he's like a California biker who is like into drugs and crime, and like, but he plays it as real as like I could imagine a criminal biker from 1990 in California. Like, it's just, who's still likes to like, is still pretty chill because he's on the West Coast, but is into drugs. And Red Surf is just, I watched it expecting a bad movie, and the content is very 90s action bad. But the performances, besides Gene Simmons, which we all understand,
phenomenal. Yeah.
Which was Oscar worthy. Snubbed truly. No, it's just like it does feel like a time capsule, but not in the way that like those 90s action movies feel like a time capsule of the type of production that they were. It feels more like a time capsule of like maybe they knew people who were like this, or like maybe they're like those characters are written like truly like decently. Like there's like 2 or 3 house parties that they go to that I'm like, that's just a generation or 2 away from like the shit that you would go to if you were out there. Like it's not far off, but the story, like there's surfing. There's very little surfing for a movie called Red Surf. I'm
actually disappointed that it's not a killer surfer movie, because like that if I were to have a surf band, if there isn't a band called Red Surf, I'm taking it.
And I hope that you do. There's so little surfing in this. It's almost disastrous. But the movie is just a lot of fun. I don't know when or where you can see it. I know that Vinegar Syndrome did like a limited release, and I would recommend getting it. It's just really an interesting piece. It's an interesting piece. I had a lot of fun watching it.
I watched Man vs. Bee. Or what it should have been called, Bee versus Bean.
2 times, huh? Two times. I'm just having a lot of fun with you guys tonight.
But Scott, last week you asked me about what is the point of putting out episodic stuff when people are going to binge it anyway. And Man vs. Bee is actually a really interesting case study.
Wait, it's an episodic thing?
It was shot as a movie, and then when they sold it to Netflix, they re-edited the movie to be an homage to like to be an homage. It's essentially a weird, more like a Quibi, but it was designed to be similar to like a short form comedy, like similarly to like what you would see at the start of a Pixar movie, or even more appropriately in like the 1930s when you would go to the movies and you would see like a Three Stooges short or like those little concise 8-minute comedy bits. So they took this 90-minute movie where Rowan Atkinson essentially is destroying a house because of a bee, which I'll get into one other thing. It may be a stolen idea, actually, which is a bummer.
Yeah, Jade. We know.
Yes, they stole it right out from underneath her.
God damn it.
But if you like slapsticky stuff, so I know Scott will not be watching this, you will enjoy it for what it is. But it is really interesting to watch 9 episodes of something that is 8 minutes apiece in the same world where Stranger Things is dropping with like an hour and 15-minute long episodes. Like it's like, oh, you mean because streaming doesn't have like scheduled times, you can also make things shorter as opposed to longer than a normal TV show episode? Like that's kind of novel. I watched a video about it by a YouTube channel called Hats Off that does really good dissections of like, why does comedy work? And they were talking about how John Hughes at the peak of Home Alone wrote a script called The Bee, which was about a contractor who was just about to finish a house, but he's losing his mind trying to kill a bee and ends up destroying like the months of work that he put into this house trying to just kill this one bee. And one of the people that he was looking to cast was Rowan Atkinson.
That's especially fucked.
Yeah, so now here we are. Rowan Atkinson has co-written a movie or a TV series called The Man vs. Bee. Now, in Rowan Atkinson's defense, before John Hughes' script, there was a short episode of the Mr. Bean TV show where Mr. Bean tears up a park trying to kill a bee.
Yes.
So, I mean, I feel like you can only own so much of the idea of Man versus Bee. But it was an interesting experiment. It's interesting to just see, and like knowing that it was a movie that they re-edited entirely to be a TV show.
You gotta stop saying the word bee.
I can't help it. It's an important conjecture word to this sentence. But yeah, it was all right. Like, it's more absurd than anything. Like, the concept of the movie is ridiculous. And I will say what the guy in Hats Off said, because he said it really well. He's like, comedy is the one form of filmmaking and writing where your characters can make the dumbest decision possible because the audience is just like, whatever. As long as it makes me laugh, I don't care. Because there's stuff like the dog has a collar that will activate the door to open and close, the doggy door to open and close. Rowan Atkinson gets locked outside. He gets the dog collar off of the dog, and a normal human being would obviously just put the thing next to the thing to open it, but he puts it around his neck to try to come in through the doggy door, and then as he gets to a certain length of point where he's no longer by the doggy door shuts on him. So it's like just dumb for the sake of dumb, but you can watch all 9 episodes in an hour or
9?
so. Yeah, they did 9 episodes of this. 9 times. That's another John Hughes reference. Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
That was all. That was just a big setup.
Yeah.
This
That's
whole
all
fucking
I was leading up
episode.
to. But yeah, Man versus Bee. I gave it a shot. I will still always call it Bee versus Bean, but that's just me. So that was Christine as picked by Scott. I spent the entire day thinking it was picked by Kyle, actually. So
No,
Well, it
I
kinda
said
was.
the B.
It's picked by Carly.
Yeah, Carly
no,
influenced this whole
she had the
thing.
assist
Literally,
on it, for
Carly
sure.
is Christine. She's making us do things that we don't necessarily want to do.
Right. I know
Women,
it. I know
guys.
it. She
Huh?
just has that way.
Huh?
It's a psychologist thing. It's all fucked.
For sure. But we'll be back next week with more Horror Movie Night. Also, don't forget to shoot us some emails, hmnpodcast@gmail.com. Just say hi. We want to hear from you. We love you. All that good jazz. All right. Later.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.